Okay, welcome in everybody. Kim, appreciate you guys being here. Thanks so much. So tonight, Jared's going to join me here in just a few minutes. Tonight we're going to talk about finding the smoke, the cause of the problems in your business before it turns into fire, so we can avoid those catastrophes, the burnout that happens in the business, the overturn of employees. We have a 3-step process for helping everybody tonight with that smoke to fire avoidance. So we're going to walk through that: attacking quickly, communicating clearly, and recalibrating often. So we'll jump in just a few seconds here.
Three, two, one.
My whole purpose for this call is to give business owners like yourself, like myself, insight into the success, the failures, the day-to-day struggles, and the real-life examples of how I've won and lost over the last 12 years of growing my own businesses. It's my hope that you'll engage and ask real questions of myself and my team, so that you can avoid the pitfalls, the roadblocks, and the struggles that I've overcome. I want to share with you what I'm doing in my businesses, plus the businesses that I help run across this country. I want to give you the insight that I've learned coaching clients in medical, real estate, accounting, and other professional services, and how we've helped them live the life of a visionary entrepreneur, scale their organizations, and leave a lasting legacy on this world.
All right, welcome in everybody. I appreciate you being here. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. If you're joining us on recording, I appreciate you watching it. Tonight we're going to talk about establishing the smoke in your business before it turns into fire. I'm sure if you're a business owner on this call, you've all dealt with fires. Here's my firefighter right here, who's dealt with many of fires here.
How's everybody doing tonight? Ready for some smoke?
I'm ready.
I should have brought the firefighter cap tonight. I think that's really what we needed.
Hilarious if you
and
showed up
you
with
need
a
to
fire.
step off the stool you're on right now.
Yeah, well, I could, if I get into like a deep lunge, we could have this for the rest of the call. But
Welcome back, everybody. It's been a few weeks. Excited to be back. So we're talking about smoke tonight.
Yeah, I would love, if you're on the call right now, if you're with us live, I would love, hopefully you saw Jared's post, you saw my post, you knew this phone call was coming. I would love to know, if you're live with us tonight, why you're on the phone call. If you saw the post, you know what tonight's phone call was about. I'd love to start off with, why are you guys on the call? What are you guys hoping to get out of tonight live with us? Go ahead and chat in right now in that chat box.
While we're waiting for that chat, do you have some examples that we're going to talk about from my practice?
Am I allowed to talk about all these
It's all fair
examples?
game. It's
Okay,
all fair
cool.
game tonight.
Yeah, so
I mean, if you want, we can bring Reese over, light him on fire, and we can talk about fires too.
we can do it live.
We can do it live.
Yeah, 4 years of us knowing together, 10 years of you being in business, multiple partners that you've been through, multiple businesses that you've started. There has been so many times that we've talked about when you first had that inkling, that smell of smoke, that red flag went off, whatever you want to call it, that you were like, I think there's a problem there, and we didn't do anything about it. And then maybe you felt a little bit of heat start coming, and then you saw the flames, and then it was too late and the flames overtook you, and now you were in the fire, trying to solve problems and spread way too thin.
Definitely. Well, and just so everybody knows, right, the smoke can arise in any of the core pillars that we talk about with our coaching clients, with our audiology team within my own businesses. The smoke can arise from mindset. The smoke or the fire can arise from culture. The smoke or the fire can arise from not knowing your specialty or your science, or it can be a marketing problem, right? So when we talk about the pillars of coaching and how we build up these strong foundations of these businesses, just remember it can happen in any one of those 4 realms, if not all 4 at the same time, which we've experienced, right? And the one thing I do bad, I guess is the right word, is I let it go from smoke, right? And go and fester too long, and next thing you know, it's turning into an explosion. And what we want to do is help you understand, how do I avoid the explosion for sure, but how do I put the fire out while it's still simmering, while it's still smoking, rather than when it's this full-blown forest fire. So we want to catch it early, we want to treat it early, right? And we want to put that fire out early. So I'm super excited you're here. Did we get any chat in of what people are wanting to avoid? What's
Don't
smoke?
make me start calling names.
We can
You're
call
here,
names.
You're here for a reason.
Let's call names.
Why on the call tonight? Why join? What are you hoping to get out of tonight, knowing now that we're gonna talk about the small things in a business that lead up to the bigger
Maybe they don't want
issues?
to talk about smoke.
What do
I
they
mean, you can bring any question up. I'm happy to just go riff. If it's not about smoke, we can talk about hiring. We can
Steve
talk
wants
about,
to talk about how good I look in this blazer. We can talk about that.
we can talk about hiring. We can talk about firing. We can talk about the clarity break, the vacations. We can talk about
I
anything
miss
you want.
Jared's face. Yeah. So do you want to quickly give us the rundown, Jared, of where you've been?
Well, I was down in Mexico for a week. Janet, messed everything up. Went to a different location than normal, but got a week down in Mexico. She's starting a business, a retail clothing boutique. So we did probably a good 8 hours of planning and structuring a new retail outlet. We talked about the floor plan in our new Arizona business, Hearing Healthcare Clinics down in Arizona. We talked about some investor relationship things and what we want to do as we scale into these other states, what we want to do with our team of investors and people like yourself that are putting skin in the game. We talked about, what new region after Arizona we're going to expand into. We talked about building up new leaders in our organization. We talked about how I'm going to help you and Reese and Keith and myself do these quarterly trainings. We had a lot of time. We had a lot of time to talk about our own personal goals, about the professional goals. We talked about, the business goals. So
That doesn't sound like the vacations that I take.
no. I mean, so everybody asked me that question, right? Are you going on vacation? Are you going on a clarity break? Your mind never stops working. And look, the thing that came to me while staring out at the ocean was water doesn't stop moving either, right? And my brain is never going to stop moving. But to leave the team in the hands of the leaders, to leave the coaching in the hands of you, I wasn't in the day-to-day. I wasn't in the daily routine. I was thinking big, right? I was thinking about the vision and the purpose and thinking about how to connect the dots. So just like the ocean moves and the waves move, sometimes it's high tide, sometimes it's low tide. And what it does is just gives me that little bit of room in my cup. It gives me that little bit of space to get big, to think big, to plan big, to get back to the vision and the purpose. And so if you don't do it, I suggest you do it. It definitely wasn't like, where were you, Disneyland?
Disney, a little bit
Yeah.
different than Mickey Mouse's house, yeah. And sometimes that water is like a tsunami, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, to your point, when you don't take care of the fires, you don't do the little things, if you don't have a leadership staff, you leave your team, like many of you might be afraid, I can't go on a clarity break like Jared. Man, Jared's so lucky he gets to step away from his business because he's got a good team to leave it in the hands of. How much is that a factor before you go to Mexico? How much planning did you do before you flew to Mexico?
Not a whole lot. Mostly it's buttoning up any loose ends or anything that has to be done right now for the following quarter. And we talk a lot about 90, the software we use, and planning 90 days in advance. So the things I was buttoning up was to make sure that third quarter starts well. It had nothing to do with second quarter.
Yeah, the lagging indicators of what's already
Yeah.
happened versus the future. Yeah, so I mean, we did get a few chat-ins. I think this is a good correlation with smoke as well. You if you're in the smoke, right? If you're in the fire, how hard is it to look at the solutions to a problem, to look at the bigger scale of things, to zoom out and see what success you're having, and actually focus on the clarity of things when you're actually in the smoke.
Well, I'm not a firefighter, so if it doesn't directly apply to the real world,
Literal speaker.
don't call me out in the literal speaker sense. But I do watch a lot of Chicago fires. So the firefighters, when they need to rescue somebody in a fire, they're down crawling on the floor, right? Smoke rises,
Sure.
and the clarity is down below it. So sometimes I have to remove myself out of the smoke. I have to get down low or get up high so that I have that clarity of purpose to see what the real issue is.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think we see a lot of business owners. There's a lot of business owners maybe on this call that are meeting us in Texas, right? So we wanted to give some specific examples of smoke, right? One of the most recent examples of smoke that I've seen with business owners we work with is we have a large event happening in Dallas, Texas, Friday and Saturday of this week. We have over 100 business owners and their employees meeting us in Texas to be trained for 2 days with Dr. Keith Darrow. The smoke that came to be is, at the very beginning, when this event was being planned, many of the business owners said, sign me up, sign my team up, we'll be there, right? Not going into that clarity or that detail with their team about why they're going, what the intention was. So the most recent smoke I've seen that isn't necessarily correlated with Jared, because we'll get to that smoke later, is the chaos that came from we're going to an event, but we don't know why. We don't know what the intention is. We don't know what the outcome might be. We don't know what the desire from the business owner is of us all going to the event. And that smoke came to be on a lot of your software that you guys use, if you're using 90 or the meetings that you're having with your team. If anybody on your team said, what's the event about? That would be the very first smoke indication, because somebody chatted in and said, I want to get better at figuring smoke out sooner. So sometimes smoke doesn't look like smoke. It doesn't smell like smoke. Sometimes it's not as noticeable as it might be. And your ears should have been ringing if you did sign up for that event and anybody on the staff said, what's the event for? Is that fair to say that that would be the first sign of there's something here that I haven't brought clarity to, I haven't shared expectations on?
Sure. I mean, yes, that's probably the first visible or tangible. I think even earlier than that is if you did it right, you announced to your team that you were going to an event. And if nobody asked a question, the likelihood of you having your team full of people that aren't fact finders, that don't need details, and you said, hey, we're going to go to Texas in a couple months, and nobody asked a question, that's truly the first sign. Because you didn't get the response back that you would have thought you would have got. So if you announce a new initiative, a new project, a new training, a new travel time, and there's no questions, that's the first sign.
Yeah.
You should expect questions back. And if you're like 90% of the teams out there, you should expect 10 questions back to an announcement like that.
Yeah, and a lot of the things we've learned right on communication, Reese talks about this all the time, even when your staff isn't asking questions, you still have to double back to them and say, if you did have a question, what would it be?
Yeah.
Because they have them. I promise you they have them. And the sooner, for whoever it is that chatted in the question of, I want to know how I notice it sooner, the sooner you can get to those fact-finding questions that they all have, the sooner you can have clarity, and the sooner you'll be quicker to your goal if you can get that clarity quicker.
I remember, I came into my kids' lives when they were older, but I remember Janet saying, what is it, the 5 W's, who, what, when, where, why, how? Like when the kids wanted to go out and stay out late or break curfew or something like that. So who, what, when, where, why, how? If your team's not asking at least those 5 questions, that's the first warning sign to me. The next one, to your point, is just simple questions. Right? Why are we going? What's the topic? What's it about? What's the dress code? All of that is, to me, smoke. And I don't think smoke has to be a bad thing.
No, it doesn't always have to be a bad thing. What it is an indicator, right? So it could be an indicator of an issue. That's where it would turn into a fire. But smoke could also just be an indicator of someone on your team doesn't have the clarity that they need. And from lack of clarity comes chaos. So we do know at some point, right, that age-old saying is where there's smoke, there's fire. There's always a reason for a rumor, right? It's no different here. If there is something going on in your office, you can trail that back to the starting point. And it almost always is the questions that didn't get asked, or the answers that weren't provided, or the time for a meeting that wasn't allotted, the clarity wasn't there, that sped into chaos.
So I think you just said something good, which I wasn't even connecting, was the visual of smoke. Right? So the visual of smoke makes things less clear, makes things hard to see, makes us distracted, right? And so what you just said was this clarity concept of, is there absolute clarity in the actions that you take, the rocks that you assign, the issues that you solve, everything in your practice or your business or your organization? Is there absolute clarity as to how this fits our vision, our purpose, and our mission?
Yeah, and that's a tough one because for a lot of us, just establishing that vision and holding it true to heart it's easier said than done.
Sure.
Right? I heard a quote from Tony Robbins the other day that said, be firm on your goal or your destination, be flexible on how you get there. And I think that sometimes is lost within the staff, that we still have our goals. The goals haven't changed. Your goals haven't changed for the whole time I've known you, but we have been flexible on how we get there. And that's easy to understand as a business owner, because you might be used to taking the risk. You might be used to ebbing and flowing, good months, bad months. Sometimes you have the money, sometimes you don't have the money. For an employee, we rely on stability. So when you change things, you're looking at it as being flexible in your destination. We look at it as a lack of stability, danger, smoke, fire. Right? So you have to be able to correlate that really, really well, because your goals might not have changed, but you do need to be flexible, but you've got to correlate that feedback to the rest of the staff.
Well, and I think the great example of this is I've shared when we closed down our Wyoming businesses, everybody had this interpretation that was like us shrinking, Now, we do more business than we did with those offices, right? So yes, we cut some physical offices, but our goal didn't decrease, our vision didn't change, our purpose didn't change. So that's definitely true. Now, you mentioned clarity. I don't know, is there more questions we have?
Yeah, there's just a quick question on clarity break, Jared,
Yeah.
because I've seen you use these really successfully. When you're going into a clarity break, can you give me the skinny again on why are you doing it? What is the clarity break again? What's the why behind a clarity break? And how do you make sure it's effective? Are you walking into the beach with an agenda? Are you leaving on the plane to Mexico saying, here's what I need to solve when I'm gone?
Yeah, well, I mean, I shared it on Instagram. For those that follow, Instagram, you can reach out, Jared Brader there. But I shared there was like 5 things, right? We wanted to talk about Janet's new business and starting a retail operation, because guess what? We're going to do it better than we did my audiology clinics. We're going to document process from the beginning. We're going to build an organizational accountability chart from the beginning. We're going to have rocks and goals. We're going to work the profit margins and the revenue backwards, right? Instead of along the way. And
So you knew that going
so
in.
we knew we were going to talk about the fact that she's starting a build out and starting this boutique. We knew that we have an Arizona floor plan to create, and what do we like about the current floor plan? Is there anything we want to change? So there was 5 big nuggets that I really wanted to focus on this clarity break.
Awesome. And then what about like the details? Let's say you're on the beach, you're discussing, let's say the build out of Arizona. Are you taking notes? Do you have your Remarkable with you? Is it all in your head?
Yeah, so I mean, I have the Remarkable. I take notes. For those that don't know, I do pretty much have a photographic memory. So luckily, if I see it, this is a principle we teach in our businesses. If I see it, if I do it, if I teach it back. So as I discuss it, I'm remembering. I'm building it into my core memory. But depending on the topic or the issue, I'm taking notes or creating a plan.
And then one last question
But
on
it's
clarity.
not like my laptop. My email's not open. My laptop's
Right.
not open. I'm not distracted with the everyday noise
Yeah.
or smoke.
I know that's big from Clarity Break, right? From EOS, from their software. No distractions, no technology that could distract you. This thing's not connected to the internet. I can't access Instagram, Facebook. I cannot distract myself. Last thing on Clarity Breaks, how often are you touching base with current employees? Are you messaging? Are you giving them feedback as ideas come? Are you holding it until you get
Yeah,
home?
I mean, I couldn't say no contact because I was
Sure.
sending you some random messages, more fun and mind releasing stuff than actual work. And I think the disconnect. So very little.
You weren't rifling one-line emails to
No
people saying-
emails, no text,
Got it.
no day-to-day management. I think the one thing people need to realize is it's not a week-long clarity break either, right? Like there was 2 hours here, there was a walk on the beach here, there was 3 hours in the sun here, and then we'd break, and Janet would read and enjoy the sun, and I might be texting, Reese, Keith, and Morgan just some random stuff. So it wasn't like, oh, Jared's gone for an entire week, he's cut off from the world, and he's backpacking in the Amazon.
Sure. Yeah, I got you. The next thing I want to talk about here, somebody chatted in, I haven't really been using my 90 properly to address smoke. So in 90, which is the software we use to manage business, it gives you all things you need to know. It's the lifeline of your business. All the data, the statistics, the numbers, the information is all in one centralized location. What are your tips there to make sure you're using that smoke indicators or the things that are in 90 to properly solve?
Yeah, I think this is really hard. So for all of you entrepreneurs out there, especially if you initiate in the green or the innovation in your Kolbe score, we are very, very good problem solvers. We are very, very good at solving things on the fly. And what happens is we solve it on the fly and we forget to raise the issue in 90. We solve it on the fly and we forget to establish a process. We solve it on the fly and we forget to communicate it with our entire team. And what I've shared multiple times is 90 made me slow down as an owner. I thought 90 was going to get everybody in EOS and the book Traction was going to get my team to speed up and get their attack speed closer to mine. But what it did is it slowed me down and made me more intentional with my time. So the example today, I was talking with a great client out in the San Diego area, and he said, look, we had this issue yesterday. We solved the issue. We sold the contract. It worked out for us. And I said, great. I said, the problem is you trained the behavior that every time that arises, they're going to come back to you for help again. And you never put it in as an issue that a process needs to be created and a way of doing business needs to be created for your organization. And so I need you to go back and do that. So it's great that you solved it yesterday, but I want to solve it once and for all. I want a process so that they're not reliant on you, the entrepreneur, every time this comes up.
Yeah, I love that so much because we've talked so many times. We failed at this and we've been successful at the feedback loop.
Sure.
And literally just talked to a client today who's having sidebar conversations with employees. That feedback, those solutions to problems, those issues, those things that come up in a conversation with an employee, that feedback loop is not closing back to the rest of the team. They're not utilizing the software to add headlines, to add issues, to add to-dos, to add information in. So when you are holding your L10s with the whole team, everybody's updated, right? And that is huge. Somebody else chatted in here, Jared, that it feels like the business is deteriorating without us. So the more we try to step away, it seems that things get worse. It would seem that our process within the business is not strong enough to motivate true autonomy. And I think there's a lot there.
Oh, there's a huge, so back up one step, right? And I started the call with smoke can arise from mindset, culture, science, or specialty, and marketing. Smoke can arise from people or process, right? And you have to look at those things in unison. You can't have amazing people with no process, and you can't have an amazing process with bad people. And so the tools that we've shared in the group, the tools that Traction puts before us, are things like the people analyzer, onboarding training, process documentation. So I know a lot of our clients come in and say, Jared, I want to buy all of your processes. If I have an audiology clinic, I don't want to recreate this from scratch. I want your processes, and then I'm going to recalibrate and train my people to that process. So if you don't have a process, if something breaks down, if you get an email or a text message or a phone call, those are issues. Those are smoke in your practice, and they need to be talked about as an entire team with to-dos that are assigned to be completed within 1 week, and then you have to hold the team accountable to complete those to-dos. So I'd love more details on the specific example, but yes, if you don't have strong process, if you don't have strong people, you're going to have this problem. What I use every quarter is that organizational checkup, and that score is going to tell me where my team thinks we're lacking. The issues that arise, the emails that show up in your leadership or director's inbox, those are issues. And the littlest of issues, that little bit of smoke, is just as dangerous as a lot of smoke. And I was laughing with Morgan earlier because I'm the type that will let the smoke simmer. There's always drama. There's always a bad person. There's always a broken process. There's always the potential for smoke to start happening, a fire to then ensue, and then to go further. But my fault is if I let something go too long, it turns into an explosion. And then that sets us back 3 months or a year.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And if you look at my last director, we knew there was smoke.
For a
We
long
knew
time.
there was smoke for a very long time.
Yep.
And I never let it turn into a fire, but then it turned into the explosion, right? And it
the
ended.
nuclear. Yeah. I understand. One thing I really want to touch on here, Jared, because I think you and I had this discussion right when you came back from Clarity Break, autonomous team.
Yep.
And I think that we've been talking about that for so long. I think a year and a half now we've been talking about you need to give the power back to your people, right? We talk about how the business doesn't move people, people move the business. And I think that we've gone a little bit too far. I think we've gone the extra mile on autonomous team. Your team is pretty autonomous. Are they perfect?
No.
Do you still talk to your team? You still go to your team's L10s? You still participate in quarterly conversations with your team?
Yep.
You still participate in writing or rewriting process every now and then? So I think this idea of autonomous team, you can't get yourself disappointed. You can't beat yourself up on my team's not autonomous, because what does that really mean? And for your team to be autonomous is not going to be the same for the guy in New York City, and it's not going to be the same for the accountant in Hawaii. Everybody has a different idea of what an autonomous team looks like. And I think you have to be fair to yourself and you've got to be fair to your team, because to expect, if your expectation as a business owner is I'll never have to go back to my business, I'll never have to go back into my business, I'll never have to cover a shift, I'll never have to hire somebody, I'll never have to fire somebody, I'll never have to rewrite a process, everything will stay perfect, everything will stay the same. It is unrealistic, and you're gonna live in this unhealthy cycle of my team is not autonomous. And I think you realize this when we had that conversation, came back from Mexico, is like more real than ever. You had gone for a few days, I think a whole week, on this clarity break. Your team was killing it. Your numbers are up. You come back to an L10. You barely participate in the L10. You're watching your team solve problems, attack each other in a positive way, and get to the real root issues, everything you've been teaching them, and you were on the meeting but on the sidelines.
Sure.
And to me, that's autonomous.
Yeah.
But to someone else, autonomy might mean I don't want to go to the L10s. So
Sure.
I feel like we've almost gone a little too far with this idea of autonomy.
Yeah, and for me, it goes back to vision, core values, purpose, alignment, right? So imagine you have a core value that says we will always have somebody at our front desk. There will not be a day that we're open without somebody at our front desk, right? If that was a promise you made, a core value, then what happens when that person calls out sick? You, the owner, rush down and cover a front desk, right? Because you made this promise. I've never made that promise. If Valerie's out sick, Jacob's either doing it by himself in Cedar City, or they'll close the office, and I'm still going to expect them to hit their goal for the
Absolutely.
week, but they'll close
Everybody's
the
gonna get
office.
rescheduled. Yeah. they're gonna have to figure it out.
So I'm not running up there to fill in. So they are autonomous. They had to make a decision. Valerie's out sick today. Are we going to reschedule appointments, or is Jacob going to do it alone?
Yeah, and I think that's what has been really fun to watch over the 4.5 years now that I've known everybody at the clinic. I've seen people come, go, the transitions, the training manuals. Like, people always wonder, how is Jared pumping all this stuff out? Well, it's because we have fires, right? Where do these training manuals come from that have the details on what we do with our people? It comes from our issues. Like, ask us how we know. We've been there, right?
Oh, we eat smoke for breakfast.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. So on the human side of things, realize the people inside of your clinic, they wouldn't be on your team if they weren't trying to do the right things, right? But what you're training their behavior to do is to come to you. So for this person that chatted this in specifically, if you've told them, here's my idea of an autonomous team, I'm going on a clarity break, I'm out, right? Don't contact me unless the building's on fire, you guys solve it. And then they contact you while you're sitting on the beach and you solve that for them because you feel like, man, I just got to step in here. What have you just trained them to do? Now, if you're not on a clarity break, it's a Tuesday, you're at home, not in the clinic, same thing. Staff texts you, emails you, calls you. Here's the situation, we need help with X, Y, and Z. And you do it for them. What have you just trained them to do? Versus put it into 90. Next Monday or Tuesday we'll solve it. We'll talk about it as a team. What behavior have you trained then? So you also have to look at, is it that your process is not strong enough? Is it that your people are not strong enough? Or are you, as the business owner, enabling the people around you? Because we've been there as well. When you step in and solve it for them, not teach them how to fish, right? But instead hand them a fish, you do them a disservice. And that's a tough thing to do, because you, as the business owner, will forever and always have this attitude of, it's always better if I just do it because it's my business, I care the most, and I should just handle it.
Look, I think there's huge separation anxiety. I went through it years ago, and I'd love to help you do it quicker. So the separation anxiety is, we always solved our own problems as entrepreneurs. If we started a small business and grew it and grew it and grew it, we knew how to do everything. But that's not a fair or realistic expectation of every team member, right? And so 90 in the organizational checkup and the accountability chart allows us to have crystal clear clarity on whose responsibility is this. A great example this week is we have a huge patient appreciation movie event, right? I, as the person in charge of marketing, scheduled the event. I ran the marketing. I put it in our newsletters. I had our automation campaigns, right? Like, the marketing component was mine. But Luann is in charge of making sure we have all of our new patients booked each week. So guess who's running that event while I'm in Dallas? Luann's running that event because she's in charge of making sure the schedule's full. Now, Luann, who's been here for years, she's done a lot of events with us, she's now tagging in her team and she's saying, I need you to do this, I need you to get balloons, I need you to do this, and she's running the event. Now look, I believe if I was at that event this Friday, we would book more appointments
Yeah,
and we would start more
absolutely.
treatments and we would do more business, and it would be the most successful event with pictures taken and all the bells and whistles, right? Because I believe in myself and have confidence in myself. But they're gonna do amazing, right? And they have 100 brand new prospects, right? They have over $80,000 worth of business to sign. Guess what's successful to me? If they sign $25,000 in business, it's a success. It was worth it. The ROI was great. But Jared's realistic number is 80,000 or 100,000.
Yeah.
So if I share with them that number, they're gonna feel like they failed. And we go back to that fear of failure. If you haven't watched the fear of failure session we did, it's an amazing session, highest rated session on the YouTube channel of the perception of success, right? But they're gonna have an event. Luann will be at that movie theater. Those patients will get a welcome gift. Dr. Darrow's video will play even though he's in Dallas, right? Those people will have popcorn, they will have a movie, and they will enjoy that Downton Abbey movie. I promise you that.
Yep.
And we will make money on the event. We might not make 80,000, but we'll make money on it.
Now, if you had to bet on it, tell me this. If you had to bet on it, we're going to be in Dallas. You physically won't be there.
Mhm.
The day of the event,
Yep.
do you think, in the whole day, do you think you will hear from your staff?
I will see posts on Instagram, and Luann will tell me probably that she's unhappy with the results. We only got 15 instead of 40 or something like that.
In the lead up to the event, do you think you'll get a message saying the popcorn machine is broken?
No.
The parking lot is too full. I can't find the sign-in sheets. Hey, Jared, what about this? Hey, Jared, what about that? Any messages?
No, so I was on the L10 this week. I let Luann speak. She had a headline about the number of attendees. She talked about the issue. I threw in my 2 cents, which was we have enough prospects coming to this event to fill our schedule for the next 30 days. And that was a light bulb moment to the team when they all gelled together and said, wow, you mean if we did this event right, we wouldn't need to triage patients, we wouldn't need to work the phones, we wouldn't need to fill. If we do this event right, this one event, this one Friday, that could be our work for the next 30 days. Yeah. Right now they're aligned with the goal of the event, they're aligned with the impact of the event, and they're gonna do it their way. And I promise you that the tablecloth isn't gonna be Jared approved, the logo won't be on straight, there's gonna be an issue, but I know what success looks like. I've shared what success has looked like. I held Luann's hand the first time we did the event. I showed her what success looked like, and now she's running it the way she's gonna run it.
And so I think that, to me, it's fair to say that's an autonomous team then. The team also knows you're in
Oh, yeah.
Texas.
Oh yeah.
Right, so the only time that Jared, you have to understand that Jared preemptively, right, Jared talks all the time about being proactive versus reactionary. He's done these events enough and he knows what could go wrong, that he's met with the staff multiple times. This week happened to be the last L10 prior to the event, where he set all of this, well, Luann set all of these expectations. She's the one running the show. She said, here, boom, 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 boom. Jared added his 2 cents. The only time he fails his team now is if he inserts himself. If he wakes up that day and says, don't forget to do X, Y, and Z, he is inserting himself into a situation that he shouldn't be, right? He's enabling his staff. B, if the staff texts him, emails him, or calls him 911, the popcorn machine is broken, the parking lot's too full, this is happening, and he enables them. If his response is not, find Luann, or figure it out yourself, or I trust you, he's enabling them. That's the only time he fails. To me, that's an autonomous team.
Yeah.
But
So-
as my stretch here, though, as a business owner, you have to look at yourself and say, if the tablecloth is not the way you would do it, they don't use the right language, they don't book you enough events, you're not satisfied. Is it that your team is not being autonomous, or are you being an unhealthy business owner? You should watch that YouTube video as well. And are you micromanaging the details versus them actually being an autonomous team?
Yeah, so 2 things. I do want to. Systems or projects fail for 3 reasons. You know what they are?
Lack of communication,
Uh-huh.
lack of recalibration,
Uh-huh.
and the lack of process.
Yep. So if something's not working in your organization, no matter how small, right? We're out of toilet paper all the way up to we didn't hit our treatment goals. It's one of those 3 reasons.
Yep.
First, we have to identify which of those 3 reasons, and then we have to dive a mile deep, not a mile wide and an inch deep. We have to dive a mile deep to solve the true underlying issue. Great example. So this week, Friday, Dr. Sterland had a brand new patient on the schedule. I left Dr. Sterland in the clinic to see patients, right? My newest employee says, Jared, you just finished telling us that this could be the single most important lead generation and marketing event for the next 30 to 60 days.
Yeah.
100 prospects. Why is Dr. Sterland staying in the clinic? Can we reschedule that brand new patient for that one new patient on Friday? You have one new patient. Can we reschedule that one new patient so that Dr. Sterling can be shaking hands with 100 prospects? I said, as long as you hit your goals this week, you can do whatever you want,
Pretty valid question.
right? Now, it could have been arguable. I could have said, no, we need that treatment start. We need that one patient to start this Friday, and that $8,000 is way more important than Dr. Sterling meeting 100 new prospects.
Yeah.
No? Great question.
And that is
and I
autonomy,
gave
right?
her whatever you want.
Yep. I think the idea of autonomy is so tricky because you have to look at those three things. Is it a weak process, a weak person, or are you enabling your staff? And you have to look at the last thing that you just said, man, the team failed us here. This thing just, last Tuesday, we had so many returns, whatever it is. Look at that and say, did you jump back into a situation that you shouldn't have? You should have waited for the L10. Or did they break the process? Was there a lack of communication?
So the other thing I see with owner-operators in all businesses, whether it's accounting, chiro, audiology, small business, you were a doer. You were the ones that did the sales or did the marketing or did the teeth cleaning or whatever it is, right? And as you've removed yourself and transitioned into either the strategist or the entrepreneur, the business owner, you're no longer in the day-to-day fight, right? You know in your heart you would be better than the person that you trained, right? Chances are you didn't hire somebody better than you. And so when cash flow gets low, when numbers start to trend down, the fight or flight mechanism kicks in and you want to go solve it. And I always say the story of I was never licensed. Right? So I had to solve the problem differently. I had to be a better coach, a better mentor, a better process person, because I couldn't just walk across the clinic and say, hey, you're off the field and I'm going to see those patients.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Literally
possible.
not doable, yeah.
Right? And so it's just your default mechanism. And I would challenge you to say, is it a process problem? Is it a recalibration problem? Or is it a communication problem? Dive deeper. Is it a people problem or is it a process problem? And solve the problem rather than going in and trying to short-term fix it. The other thing I would challenge is I will not go back into my clinic. I will not turn back into a full-time director or a doctor or a front desk person. And I do want to be a business owner. So if you don't want to be a business owner, you don't want to deal with people, you don't want to be in the day-to-day fight, you have to put that in your VTO as your vision and your purpose, and you have to stay committed to it. If you don't want to be a business owner, then you need to hire somebody for a few $100,000 and you need to put them in charge. And when you put them in charge, you have to show them what success looks like, you have to be crystal clear with those priorities, and you have to train them for a while.
I love that you just said that, just because we talk with employees all the time that you have to like voice your goals in order to bring them to light.
Sure.
And I know a lot of business owners that we work with, they don't have it in their VTO that they're out of the business because they don't want to freak everybody out. But how freaked out are they going to be if you do get 3 years in and then all of a sudden you pull that ripcord versus allowing them time to make plans, process, communicate?
Yes, and so I want to go back to tactically, what can you do? I don't know if there's more questions. Tactically, Morgan's manual here is probably one of the best things we've ever done that I don't know if anybody's implemented.
Nobody has. That's okay. 2 years, baby. 2 years.
And the process component in your 90 software. If your processes are not documented in the process component of 90 software, your team doesn't know where to look and doesn't know what success looks like. Right? Morgan and I spend a lot of time together. The reason that we think the same way and that we're willing to have open and honest communication is because we spend a lot of time together. How often do you meet on a scheduled basis with a scheduled agenda on the same day at the same time every week with your leadership team? Yeah. Are you having leadership L10s? Are you assigning 90-day projects? Are you addressing real issues that are causing the smoke? Don't address the smoke.
Yeah.
That smoke will dissipate. That smoke will go away. And we saw that with my last person that left, is the minute that person was gone, the sunny skies started coming out again. The smoke dissipated. People started being autonomous. They started learning again.
Instant release.
Instant release.
Yeah, instantly.
Right? So are you having those meetings? And that would be chat it in. Are you having those meetings?
I think it's fair to say, like, if you're a business owner who's utilizing 90 and the majority of your conversations or the headline of your issue or the conversation you're having is, we need to turn the red numbers green, meaning we're not hitting goals and we need to hit goals. Yeah, I think you have to understand what Jared's trying to say is right now you're focusing on the smoke, you're looking at the haze and saying that doesn't look right, and you're not asking, you're not trailing it back to where did it come from. Do you remember the story from Upstream, the book about solving business issues? And these guys are sitting next to a river and they see this kid come floating down the river asking for help. He's drowning, so he runs and helps the kid, pulls him out of the river. A few minutes later, here comes another kid floating down the river. He jumps in the river, helps the kid out of the river. Here comes a third kid. And finally, he leaves that kid to drown, walks up the river, and everybody's like, where are you going? We've got to help this kid. And he says, I'm going to go upriver and figure out who the hell's throwing all these kids into the river. And that's the source of the problem. So the more you're meeting and saying, we've got to turn our bad numbers good, our red numbers green, you're looking at that haze, you're watching the kid float by you and focusing on that and not focusing on the reality of the issue and where the stem of the issue is coming from.
A great example this week was, right, we're not getting enough treatments. Not my practice, a client. We're not getting enough revenue. We're not getting enough revenue. We're not getting enough revenue. And ultimately, that we're not getting enough revenue came from, well, we stopped our marketing.
Yeah.
So how much are we going to beat up the sales team or the revenue team when reality was it was the marketing department's fault?
Yep. And the people that are in charge of the sales, they want to blame the phones people, and the phones people want to blame the marketing people, and the marketing people want to blame the coach. And there's a reason that they all say, right, shit rolls downhill, but at the end of the day, there's always is a beginning to that smoke. You just have to ask the right questions and look for it. So I put in the chat, I want everybody to chat in while we have Jared here. I think somebody should chat in some smoke that you have in your business. So these would be things that you're worried about, things that you're noticing, issues that you're saying, that doesn't seem right, I don't like that, this might be a worry to me, because I want to walk you through the process of how Jared realizes that smoke, and here's how I'm going to deal with it. I think the thing that is probably the most important, what we wrote down in our 3-step action plan, is act quickly. Right? Like we put that at the top of our list because where we've made mistakes in the past, where I've made mistakes with past employees, is where do you draw the line of there's always smoke, there's always issues, there's always drama, there's people coming going. We talked about liabilities versus assets. You can't get rid of all of the liabilities. How do you know when it's just smoke that exists, like the haze over LA, versus negative, toxic smoke that's bad for you, that's bad for your business?
Well, if you're using any type of, if you're keeping score at all, right, how do you know when you're off track? In a football game, how do you know when you're off track?
Yeah, you stop scoring touchdowns.
The scoreboard says so.
Yeah, you don't score.
What does your scoreboard say, right? So, and then you have a countdown timer, right? So you have a scoreboard,
quarter, second
and you have
quarter,
a
third
and a
quarter.
countdown timer. So I look at the scorecard, right? Everybody's going to have red. Nobody has green every week. I don't have green every week in every number. That's not realistic. If that was if you were having green every week on every number, your goals are too small and you need to think bigger, right? So you have red. The idea is that you solve it within 3 weeks. There's 3 strikes, right? If you have red for more than 3, if you have red for 6, if you have red always, what's the problem? Leadership or the team? Why are you letting that much red happen?
Yeah.
Right? And so for me, it's acting quickly, but it's noticing quickly.
Yeah.
Right? And if you have a red number and you don't drop that down as an issue and solve that issue, if you have a to-do, and I promise you, because I have access to a lot of our coaching clients' data, if you log into your 90 and you have to-dos that are overdue, what's the problem? Accountability and recalibration and leadership, or the team?
Yeah. Is it the red numbers or is it time management?
Yeah. How does somebody 4 weeks overdue on a to do that's a 7-day to do?
I agree. And that's one of the reasons with all the people that we've seen come and go, the hiring, the firing, the training, the manuals that we've built, step number 1 on establishing smoke and getting your smoke out of your business before it turns into fire is attacking quickly. This is something on, we have an agreement, we talk about this all the time with all the clients. The next time either one of us smells smoke, we're gonna call the other person out, we're gonna say, that's smoke, let's deal with it today. Because what's happened in the past, and I'm sure you've made this mistake just like we've made this mistake, is you smell it, you can see it, something's not right, something's going wrong, someone stops showing up to meetings, they start showing up late, they have a little bit of toxicity in the business, you smell smoke, and you don't do anything about it. Bad smoke that's bad for your business, and you do nothing. That will be detrimental down the road.
How bad is smoke? When you get in an Uber, right, that has smoke in it, you know it's been smoked in.
Terrible.
Right? So if you're not flushing that smoke out quickly and fast, you're repeating the mistakes that I've made. And my purpose for this call was to help those that joined to compress time, to have quicker attack speed, and to solve these problems and avoid what I took 12 years to learn. So hopefully you understand and make sure you're making great traction for you and your team to solve the big problems that are causing those red numbers. Don't treat the symptoms, treat the cause.
Yeah. Just a quick example on attack speed, I'll give you two. The earliest that you could possibly be on attack speed with a new employee, I think we've nailed it on this last one. Jared hired a new employee. The employee showed up to like the second day of work.
Didn't you hire the new employee?
Yeah, but you know what I mean. We hired a new employee, second day of work, first day of work, I can't remember. New employee said, there's some X, Y, and Z happening in the front office. There's some drama, there's some smoke. Jared and I instantly perked up and said, just like a smoke in an Uber, a smoke in a hotel room, you know that someone has smoked in this room or this building or this car before you. New employee entered the building and instantly smelled smoke. Something's not right here, there's drama. So we instantly, that next day, had a meeting with the people of that front office staff and stopped it.
Off-site, you pulled them over
You
off-site.
can't act any quicker than that. I don't think it's possible.
And if you want, you can, trust me, I've done it. If you act,
Maybe.
I mean, we go to proactive and reactionary, right?
Yep.
I can act quicker than what we did in that situation, but I would do it without all the facts. I would do it emotionally and
You might fire
reactionary.
the name later. It could end bad.
And it could end bad. Or I would text them and say, cut the bullshit,
Yep.
right? What you did is you said, great, tell me the information. Let's call this meeting tomorrow afternoon. You pulled those people off site and you had a raw and real conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, for us, that's how important this idea of attack quickly really is, because we had a new employee. This is the brand, you've invested $24,000 probably in this new employee who showed up, between the time interviewing, the name tags, the wow boxes, everything that goes into a new employee. And now on their second day of work, realizing, man, maybe this isn't the place for me because I don't like X, Y, and Z. Boom, that's got to stop right there.
Well, and I think it's fascinating to me because our first day, you know, like Disney traditions, right, is the core values, is this core belief.
Yep.
And if you spend the first day with us and you learn the core belief and you hear about Disney and Ritz-Carlton, and then the second day you show up and the internal and the external don't match.
Yeah, who do you go to?
Who do you go to,
Yeah.
right? And I'm grateful that the brand new employee, because most brand new employees won't do this, I'm grateful that the brand new employee said something and we could solve it earlier. Otherwise, we might have lost another good one.
Absolutely. And you bring up a good point. You've seen me do many of interviews, especially my interviews of late.
Yep.
After more research and more interviews that I've been doing, I've again changed my tactic. And I think that's the most proactive we've ever been, that actually in the interviews now, we're already attacking quickly and saying, these are our core values.
Yeah.
This is what it looks like to work. Come and shadow for us. Come and do this. Come and do this. So that before they even have a job, they have been baptized in the way we do business, so that if they do show up, and God forbid, current employees are humans, they do something wrong, that newest employee can say, that's not the way that Jared or Morgan told me to do it.
Well, and I mean, you looked at them in the eye and said, basically, if it happens again, you're off.
Yeah, so,
Like there
so
was-
somebody chatted in and said, without jeopardizing the new employee and without causing existing employees to spiral to a different level, basically, how did you have that conversation? And, I was in it, so maybe you can describe what exactly happened. And then the final question here is, can you tell us more about the smoke was? So a specific example of what was happening. I don't know how to sum it up other than.
Well, yeah, so brand new employee heads over and sees the wrong personality, different personalities, wrong. See, I even say bad words. Different personalities, right? And there's these different personalities in my clinic. Two of them being two of the newer employees. And and those two people are never going to be best friends.
Yeah, we have an underlying issue.
They're never going to go to dinner together. They're never going to grab a beer together. They're not going to be friends, right? But personality is not a core value of mine, and being friends is not a core value of mine. What is a core value is treating the patients properly, doing this, doing that. So we brought them over, all three of them. We know, because we have cameras, we know that at least one of them was very uncomfortable being called over to an off-site place to have a meeting. And you put all three of them in the same place. It wasn't like, well, I'm gonna go talk to this employee separately than this employee. You put them all in the same place, you had a conversation, and we did an IDS section.
Yeah, it wasn't, I don't believe it was an attack at all. It was very much calculated. I spent the better part of the day before the meeting doing my research. So I, as a fact finder, logged into the camera, I found instances, I clipped film, I collected everything I needed so that I could basically show up to this court case and say, here's my thoughts, what are your thoughts, what are your thoughts? Let's all come together and solve the problem together. The specific instance that had to be solved that I said, if I ever see it again, you're off the team, was employees talking about each other behind their back. So it happens in all the businesses, it happens on every team ever. It's happening in your business, you probably just don't know it, or it's happened at some point in your business. Two employees talking bad about another employee. Well, this one employee happened to hear it through the wall. So once I came to be aware of all of that, that was the specific instance that I said, you are off the team if I ever see this again. And they were all in agreement.
Yeah,
they all understood.
well, and two things. So even IDS, the instructions for IDS say the same thing. You get to state your case once.
Yeah.
Right? You get to say, I believe X, Y, and Z employee is not following our process and doesn't have our patients in their best mind. You can say it once. You get to put your opinion out there once. That person gets to put their opinion out there once. There's not this arguing. You definitely don't get to go to your other employees and try and pick sides. You state your case, you state your issue, you dive deep on the issue, you solve the issue, at least agreement on how to move forward on the issue. Right? And what you don't want is the high school drama where they're building teams. I like these three employees, well, I have these. Now you just have a separation down the middle.
Yeah, I use the three-step IDS process. If you don't have it, email me, morgan@audexperts.com. I use that three-step process at home all the time. I don't know if my wife knows it or not. I don't know if she'll see this video, but the three-step process is how you get to the root of an issue. Period. Doesn't matter what business you're in or how you're doing it.
So that night that we were here, I mean, you said we'll stay as late as it takes. I've given up the night with my kid and my wife. We'll stay here as late as it takes. And the issues that came out of it that turned into personality and backbiting, the issues that came out of it, I think, were we don't have a process for ear molds. We don't have a process for checking something back in.
And new employee is not following process.
Yeah.
That was like a root cause of the issue was we have this new employee, but she's not following the process, and so now we don't like her.
Yeah.
Because she's not with us.
Yeah. Well, she wasn't following the other two's process, but there wasn't an actual company process, right? So it was, I don't like the way you're doing it, not you're breaking our rules or you're breaking our company process. I don't like the way you're doing it. Yeah. And it was emotional, it was personality, it wasn't process or recalibration.
Yep. And you'll probably remember when I started that meeting, it was as simple as, here's why we're here today. I shared the facts of the case. I laid it all out in front of them, told them I have all night. We can be here for as long or as little amount of time as you guys want to be, but we're not leaving this room until we solve it. And then I shut up. And you might remember that I literally just went quiet. And we sat in awkward silence for probably 5 minutes before somebody said, I feel like X, Y, and Z. And everybody got to go around the room and be heard once and no more than once. And then we looked to solve the issue. The secondary problem there, and we've had a few people chat in, like, what is the process here? And I think this will help a ton, was step one was attack speed, right? So we knew that there was an issue and we attacked. So attack meaning move towards the issue and solve it. Step number two was communicate clearly. I think I did a great job, that meeting's recorded, maybe one day everybody will get to see it, of communicating clearly. So step one, attack. Step two, communicate clearly. And I think that's something over the years of the start time, the end time to the meeting, the agenda of the meeting, why we're in here, what the resolution to the meeting will be, your 5-step process to solving issues is the clarity of a meeting. So step one, you gotta attack.
Yeah.
Step two, you gotta be clear.
Yeah, and I mean, there was an agenda to that meeting. in advance with 3 people coming over, there was an agenda that was clearly communicated.
Yep.
And then when we left that meeting, we were aligned in what's next. We were aligned in, which is a core value of mine, agree upon the next steps.
Yep.
As far as emergencies go, just so everybody knows, if you're in our group, in our coaching group, I mean, you have emergency phone calls with me if Morgan can't help you. You have Fix It Fridays. You know, you have access. If something pops up that truly is that kind of an emergency, you know, we want to be there. We want to help you. We want to tell you what we've done in the past and how to walk through it. Yeah. So don't be afraid to reach out. But our ask back is, let's solve the problem. Let's dive a mile deep and solve the underlying problem, because it's healthy for your team. And I promise you, as much as they all admitted that meeting was uncomfortable, right? They've now moved forward.
Yeah, and
right?
that was another question there, is like, how did you keep the new employee going and not ruin the old employees? And that is the 3-step process: the attack speed, getting after the problem, communicating clearly, and then recalibrating often. So to answer your question about how we didn't lose any of the lambs, right? We kept them all in one pile together after the fact, is that wasn't the end of the meeting, right? That there was a meeting the week after that. There's been several recalibrations. There's been multiple
time
videos pulled.
with Reese, time with Keith, retraining,
There has been
broken
follow-up.
training process from the beginning. How many times did I say it's my fault that you weren't properly trained? It wasn't my fault. I wasn't the one in charge.
Yeah.
But it is ultimately my fault, and I had to fall on the sword and say it is my fault that you don't understand that process as a new employee, right?
So for the one that chatted in, what is the process? The process here, from establishing that smoke, making sure the smoke doesn't turn into fire in your business, is attacking quickly, making sure you get on top of that smoke, that's bad, negative, toxic smoke in your business. Communicate clearly. What is the agenda? Why are we having this meeting? What is going on? And then recalibrate often, because when that meeting ended, we left. One of his core values is always agree on the next steps. So we communicated very clearly what was going to happen next. And there was a sequence of events. There was multiple meetings with Reese, Morgan, Jared, lunches were had, communication was had, and now we still recalibrate often. We just had the giant board game with your staff, where I purposely put the 2 employees that don't necessarily love each other on the same team, right? Because like it or not, this is the real world, and we work with people that we don't love. And I get to be the sick leader that makes people that don't like each other work together, because that's the only way to find commonality and actually build a team. So even a month later, on the next month's live in-person training, they were still being recalibrated because they were forced to be on the same team.
Yep. I love it. I love it. The other thing I would say, and I work a lot with visionary owners, entrepreneurs that want to grow their business. And I really can't stress enough, go back to the 5-step problem solving, right? Write down the current state of what's going on. Write down what you want it to be in the future. Write down the deadline that you expect it to be done. How you will measure success and who's responsible for it. It's all too often that we say our revenue number is red. And our revenue number is red again, and our revenue, but we never assign somebody to take ownership of it and solve it their way, and we never put a deadline to when it needs to be green, and what the clarity of the outcome will be if it doesn't turn green, and how we will measure turning it green, right? So you have to go through an actual intentional thing if you want to solve these problems once and for all. And I've told the painful story. I will still say it. I'm 5 years behind on my quest to be in the Arizona market because of Morgan, right? But those, 4 years, maybe 4 or 5 years, however long it was, were probably the best to put us in a position for long-term success.
Yeah, the preparation.
I mean, we hired somebody for 18 months that did a fabulous job documenting every single process, from how to change light bulbs to how to hire somebody. It's already evolving, it's already improving, but that was an amazing 18-month project. I do not regret the money spent on a full-time worker off-site for 18 months. I think that was a phenomenal outcome.
I agree.
Right? And so, yes, I'm getting to Arizona slower than I wanted, but I'm getting there in a stronger position.
Yes, I absolutely agree. Hopefully we've left you with the 3 tips that Jared uses even to today: attack quickly, communicate clearly, and recalibrate often.
I want another one. I want another question. Any more questions? Was there more
Fire
on there?
away.
Was there more questions on there?
That was it. 60 seconds for another question for Jared.
Another question. I think we have even some employees on today.
We do. Firing anonymously a question.
Awesome. Should I call Reese over and make him throw a question? All right. Well, 3-step process again. What is it?
3-step process. Attack quickly, communicate clearly, recalibrate often.
Reach out if needed. Looking forward to seeing those of you that are coming to Dallas. Looking forward to learning more nuggets of leadership, communication, and how to solve these problems at Morgan's upcoming leadership event on June 16th. So reach out if you'd like to attend. I look forward to having my team there, my team leaders. You're going to see what we're doing with team leaders from Arizona. Send your team leaders if you want these things done by your leadership team in your businesses. Looking forward to see you again. Thanks for joining.
Boom.
Record.